All right, guys, I am excited that it's Monday. And today we are going to be talking about career hacking, which has the potential to supercharge your path to FI. And I'm excited to have ESI from esimoney.com actually take the time to coach us through this. Now, I should let you know, ESI had a 28-year career in business, and he earned an annual pay increase of over 8% each year and eventually became the president of a $100 million company. I don't know many other FI bloggers that can say that. So he knows a little bit about growing a career. Now, today, he's actually going to be sharing a few tips you can apply to help you earn more and reach FI sooner. Welcome to the show, guys.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
And we're back. Brad's here with me in the studio today, and we've also got ESI here with us. So we're going to be talking a little about career hacking. This is something that I don't think anybody spends enough time talking about it. We're always focused on getting to the other side, and I think it's a conversation that's worth having.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we focus a lot on frugality, obviously. We focus on cutting expenses, but we don't focus often enough on the career side and earning more, getting larger pay increases, negotiating for salary. There are all these things that, this is two different sides of the same FI coin, right? And we need to be focusing on this. So I think ESI is clearly an expert, and this should be a wonderful conversation.
So ESI, welcome to the studio. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. It is a pleasure to be with you. I love your podcast, love what you're doing, and it's just an honor to be here.
Very cool. Well, an honor. That is the first, and yeah. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. So why don't you go ahead and maybe we should just start this thing off by kind of introducing you a little bit. Do you want to tell us and our audience a little bit about yourself and your story?
To hit the highlights, I mean, you kind of covered a lot of it in the intro. I'm 53 now, retired at 52. I hit financial independence, depending on how you calculate it and where we wanted to be, probably somewhere in my 40s, early 40s. Continued to work. I enjoyed my career. I worked out a lot. We'll talk obviously a lot about that today. And then right now I'm enjoying the fruits of being retired and doing whatever I want to do. I live in Colorado, so those two things, being retired and living in Colorado, are just awesome. It's an awesome combination.
Very cool. We talk a lot about geo arbitrage, and I can't help but feeling that when we come to the end of this story, we're going to find out that it doesn't matter what the numbers say. Colorado might be the perfect place to live.
It might be the exact perfect place to live. Yes.
That's awesome. And you got a lot of good company over there. I know Carl, 1500 Days, and Mr. Money Mustache, also all out of Colorado.
Yes, there's a lot of people in the FI community in Colorado.
So ESI, why don't we just take a second and just kind of set a value on this? Let's just talk to our audience just for a second. Why does your career matter? Why should we be spending an hour or as long as it takes talking about this?
Right. And a lot of people don't think about this, but I like to phrase it that your career is a multimillion-dollar asset. I mean, if you just look at some basic math, you say you come out of college, you are starting at $35,000 a year, and you average just average pay increases of 3% a year. And let's say you have a 45-year career. Now, we're going to work towards not working for 45 years. That's what financial independence is about. But just assume 45 years from now. But you're going to make $3.2 million during that time. So you're at 22 and you have a $3.2 million asset. If someone gave you $3.2 million, what would you do with it? You'd probably take some steps to guard it, to grow it, to make it the most it could possibly be. And that's what your career is. And that's kind of my point of view on what people should be thinking about as they approach how to handle their careers.
Yeah, that's cool. We in the FI community, we love math and we love compound interest, and we like creating these equations that help us define the perimeters of our own personal framework. And I think there's real value to just looking at what your career and what your income, what is that framework? What are the perimeters of that if you were just to write it out, and then you can make a decision from there. So that's a great thought.
Right. And that's really, so that's good news that it's a multi-million-dollar asset. The better news is that there are steps you can take to make it worth even more. And I'm not talking talking about a few $100,000 more. I'm talking about there are steps that you can take if you're intentional about it to make it worth millions of dollars more. And we'll go back to the math. So the main two ways to make your career worth more is, first of all, you start at a higher beginning pay. So in my example, I used $35,000 to start out. If you start out at 40 instead of 35, you earn an extra $500,000 over that 45 years.
You had me at hello.
Yeah. So if you start at 50, you have an extra 1.4 million. And this is just the difference in the earnings. This doesn't include, hey, what if I took that difference and I invested it and it grew and it compounded over 10, 15, 20 years? It doesn't include any of that. This is just the salary difference. It adds up to big money. So there are some ways that you can do that. Obviously, a lot of people in the FI community do the first option, which is they select a major or a job field where the salaries tend to be higher. So business, engineering, computer technology, medicine, you're going to go into any of those fields, you're going to start at more than $35,000 a year for sure. Probably you're going to start more than $50,000. So you start at a pretty good level. Second thing, let's say you don't pick one of those. You want to negotiate the best starting salary that you possibly can. So when a company offers you a job, that's just the first offer. You now have an opportunity to go, I love everything you're doing. I think I can really contribute here. But instead of 35, I'm looking more like 37, 38. And you work on that, because what's going to happen is your future raises are all going to be based off that initial starting number. So you want that starting number to be as high as it possibly can be. And then the third thing is you can add on an extra degree. That's what I did. So I had an undergraduate degree that looked like I was going to earn. I graduated back in the Stone Age, right? So back in the mid 80s. So I was going to make about $18,000 to $20,000 with my undergraduate degree. And I was like, nope, I don't want to do that. I want to make more money. So I took 2 years. I got an MBA. I didn't pay anything for it because I got a staff assistantship where the college basically paid for my tuition in exchange for me working every weekend. And I ended up with a $40,000 starting salary. So I basically doubled my salary in 2 years. So that's another way that a big leap can be made to get a starting salary higher than what you might expect otherwise.
That's really cool. One of the things that comes to mind, just as we're talking, I can tell when I'm getting really excited about an idea is I can't wait to get my thought out there. And what strikes me right now is the value of having someone be able to coach you from the inside. So a lot of us just get our job and we assume that we're just doing the right thing. But in the FI community, and specifically in the Choose FI community that we're trying to create, we're getting to learn the best from people that have really figured this one thing out, or maybe multiple things out. And I got to think, I know you have kids. I got to think that your kids are probably really well positioned as they're going into maybe high school and college. They've got some of these kind of things that you figured out, and they're really teed up to maybe get that higher salary. And then when you expand that out to the masses, our audience can benefit from this, because if they can just take, the 20 or 30 years of experience that you have and the few things that you figured out and apply that to themselves. And then also, I know how excited we get about second generation fire. If they can apply that to their kids, how cool is that? And that is cool. Millions of dollars, right?
Yes. And you're absolutely right. A lot of people just assume, hey, my job is my job. I'll do a quote good job and I'll quote work hard, and I'll get fairly treated. Well, that doesn't happen in a lot of cases. You have to kind of, just like you manage your investments, just like you manage your spending, you need to manage your career. And if you do that, you will get more. If you just kind of let it go and get, I call it, go along raises. If you just kind of go along with your career, you're going to get go along raises. And you don't want go along raises. You want to have raises that are significantly higher than what the average person gets. And that's the second point. We'll talk about that in a second, is that in addition to starting high, if you can get higher than 3% raises, which is really, really doable if you just focus on it a little bit, you can make millions and millions of dollars more over the course of your career.
There's one thing that people in the FI community get excited about, and that is the word millions. You instantly have them, right? But one of the things that strikes me is that you're talking about this not just from the position of somebody that has had to ask for raises, but from the position of somebody that probably has given them as well. So you're seeing this from
Right.
both sides.
Yeah, that's one question that I definitely have is, from the perspective of a president of a $100 million company, what would you tell to the audience who they might be nervous? They might be scared to walk into their boss's office and negotiate a salary, or when it's time to get that job offer. I mean, there's a lot of trepidation when it comes to the actual act of negotiation. Do you have any actionable tips you can pass along?
Yeah, I sure do. I assume we're going to get into that. I actually have 7 steps to how to grow your career. And the first one focuses around doing more than is expected in your job. And there's a systematic way to basically set up your boss to know exactly what he wants. Then you deliver more than that. And it's a regular discussion that you have as you meet with him or her on a regular basis. And it just becomes natural. It becomes real easy to ask for more money when you are doing more than what they expect. So for me, as you go back to being a company president, I want to reward people that are doing more. I see people that are doing more. I know that I expect Jonathan or Brad to do A, B, and C. But if Jonathan and Brad are doing A, B, and C, and they're knocking that out of the park, and they're doing D and E as well, I'm like, I got to keep these guys happy. I got to give them more money. I got to give them more responsibility, because otherwise they're going to go somewhere else and take their talent somewhere else. So I need to reward them. So the tips I'm going to be giving come from both me, as you said, as an employee, but also as a manager. I've managed people for a couple decades, and looking at what they're doing and how I would reward them as a result of their actions.
And I've never heard anybody else have this conversation. Certainly, I haven't heard it in any of the personal finance space. So I'm excited that we're doing this. I think this is really new territory that we're exploring right now.
Awesome. Well, if I can, let me share with you guys just the raise information. If you start at a higher level, that helps. But really where the magic is if you can get better than average raises. So our original example was you start at $35,000 a year, you get 3% raises, you make $3.2 million. Those are the baseline numbers. If you just get 4% raises, so just 1% more, that earns you an extra $1 million over your career.
Wow.
If you earn 5% raises, that gets you an extra $2.3 million. And if you earn 6% raises, that gets you an extra $4.2 million. And none of this factors in the fact that you could take that extra money and you could invest it. And now imagine you're not working 45 years. You're working 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how much money you want to save up, because you're getting raises, you're socking that money away, you're saving a good percentage of it, you're investing it into index funds, and it starts multiplying on top of itself, and it just becomes this big snowball. But the key is your career is the engine that drives the FI train. You need to focus on your career, drive it, earn as much as you possibly can, siphon off as much as you can, and that's going to give you the opportunity to retire in 10, 15, or 20 years.
That's so valuable. And your perspective on that it's nail on the head. I mean, that's perfect. So this is definitely a conversation that was overdue. All right, ESI. So I think one of the things that we always try to focus on is actionable tips. I mean, is there any sort of stepwise process that we could use, that we could apply to the masses in terms of how to manage your career and how you can, if you were to manage it in a certain way, it would kind of guarantee you this outcome?
Well, okay. Guarantee is a strong word.
I like it, but if we can't get it, I would say I'd stick with promote.
Okay. Well, let me tell you this. So over my 28 years, both as an employee and as a manager, I've kind of narrowed down to 7 steps that can really help you grow your career. The first one is probably has the biggest benefit, has the most action steps. So if we want to go through that one, that's where everybody needs to do this one. The other ones supplement this one, but this one really has to be done and has to be done well, because it's where kind of the meat of the ideas come from. So the idea simply is that you want to perform. And to backstep a little bit, when you're hired by a company gives you a salary, and that salary comes along with job requirements or expectations. So they say, we're going to give you this money, and we expect you to do these things in return for us. And if you do those things, then if you stay there a few years, you get them kind of average raises, probably because they want to keep you happy. It just kind of goes along, but you're not going to get anything extraordinary because you're not doing anything extraordinary.
Right.
The people who get, who do more than expected are the people that get higher than expected raises. And that's what this process is about how do you do that? All right. So the first step is you need to determine the expectations for your position. And a lot of companies have annual reviews, but you need to be a little more aggressive than that. So simply you sit down and you talk to your boss and you say, hey, boss, I want to make sure that I'm doing a great job. I want to deliver for you. I want to deliver for the company. I mean, this is like when you're saying this to your boss, he's like, this is the best employee in the world. I mean, you'll have him eating out of your hand because you're taking a proactive approach to helping him and helping the company. He's going to love this. So, boss, I just want to know, what do you expect from, let's write down the 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever it is, things that you expect me to do in this position. And as part of that, my second step is you want to make it as quantifiable as possible because you don't want to have any gray area for, well, did I hit it? Did I not hit it? So for example, let's say you're in sales. You don't want to have an expectation of, quote, grow sales. That's vague. Nobody knows if you hit it or don't hit it. You want to have something like grow sales 8%. That's specific, and you know whether you hit it or not. If you're cutting costs, you don't say, I want you to cut costs. You want to say, well, how much? Cut costs 15% is quantifiable, and then be determined whether you hit it or not. So you sit down with your boss, you have that conversation, you write down the expectations, you make them quantifiable, so there's no question about whether you hit them or not. And then, so once you've got that, you both agree, now you work to over-deliver on those things. Because if you just do what's expected, as I said, you're going to get expected raises. So you're going to do more than that because you want higher raises. So if your objective is to grow sales 8%, you're going to try to grow at 10% or 15% or whatever it might be. If you're supposed to cut costs by 15%, you're going to cut 20%. You're going to do whatever the goal is. You're going to do more than that. All right. So that's where I get overperforming.
Yeah. So that all sounds good and it makes perfect sense. But just walk me through mechanically how an employee would sit down and have that meeting with the boss. So for instance, I can easily visualize if I'm starting new at a company, right? You have that meeting, you're proactive, you from day one are this model employee. But let's say someone out there is listening to this, we have many, many thousands of people listening to this podcast. They've worked at their company 2, 5, 10, 15 years, and they've never done this before. How would you suggest to that person to actually get up the nerve to have that meeting? What do they say to their boss? This kind of stuff is the difference between people hearing this and saying, wow, that sounds fantastic, and them actually taking action. So if you don't mind, I'd love to hear some thoughts.
Right. So there's a couple ways to do it. First of all, almost every organization in the world has some sort of review process, and they either have it on an annual basis, semi-annually, quarterly, whatever it might be. So that is a natural time. So if you're really hesitant about, well, I haven't talked to Jim for 5 years about my career to go in now, I just feel kind of tentative about it, you could prepare now, and then when the performance review comes, that's a natural time to bring it up. So that's one option. Another option is if you just say you don't want to wait that long, you can just walk in to Jim's office or your established meeting that you have. Like, for example, I would meet with my bosses usually every week, every other week. You meet with them on a regular basis anyway, and you have a list of things you're going to talk about. And you could say, pretty much go through what I said at the beginning. Say, Jim, I've worked here for 5 years, and it's been awesome working for this company and for you, but I want to continue to do more. I want to be a better employee. I want to deliver more for you, for the company. And if you don't mind, I'd like to sit down with you. It doesn't need to be now. It could be, in a week or two or when we have more time. I'd like to sit down with you and kind of write out some expectations that you have for me in this job, because I want to be sure I'm doing exactly what you want me to do and doing it, in a manner that's excellent. I mean, there's not a boss I guess there will be bosses in the world because not every boss is great, but a good boss is going to go, that's awesome. I'm going to, I love that sort of, I want those sort of employees. So they're not going to, put up any walls. They're going to be great. Let's do it, a week from Tuesday. I'll come with my thoughts and you can come with your thoughts. We'll put them together and then we'll do kind of what I took you guys through before. You determine the expectations, you write them down, make them quantifiable, and then you're off to the races. You're working on overperforming after that point in time. And then what you do from there on is you now have this written list. You're off overperforming. You document your success and you remind your boss how well you're doing on a regular basis. So what I would do, here's how I manage my boss. I would say, hey, Jim, these are the 5 things we talked about a couple of months ago. I just want to keep you informed because I want to make sure that you know exactly where I stand on all these at all times. So every boss in the world is going to love that too, right? He wants to be in the know. So here's the list of my 5 and here's where I stand. So I was supposed to grow sales by 8%. Right now I'm at 12.3. I was supposed to cut costs by 15%. I'm actually now at 18.2. And you just take them through that. So what you're doing now is you're reinforcing to your boss that you're over delivering. And you're doing that on a regular basis, whether that's once a month, once a week. I've done it different ways. I've done it face to face with a piece of paper that I hand out, and I've done it on an email update that I would send every Friday saying, here's where my department, so you talk about your department or your people or your projects, here's what we're doing, and here's where we are versus our expectations. And it's a natural, I'm just updating you. I'm just keeping you informed. And Jim's going to love that because now he's in the loop, but you're also subtly putting in there, you asked me to do 8 and I'm doing 12. You asked me to do 15, I'm doing 20. So Jim's getting a message on a regular basis, kind of like advertising.
Yeah.
This person's doing more than what I expect them to do. They're a good employee. I need to keep them happy and look out for them when raises come around.
I totally am visualizing what you're saying. I mean, I can see that working. I've been in that system. I've been on both sides of that construct, and that is incredibly powerful. You had a very tweetable quote there that Brad and I both looked at each other. Manage the boss. That is powerful. And what's really cool about that is that while that is a totally tweetable line, there's nothing shady about that. What you're doing, they are winning. But when you put yourself out there in this manner, like you said, they are craving this. Their job is to get 100% from their employees or 110%. You're making their life easier when you go ahead and set this construct up for them, which is super cool.
Yes.
All right, ESI, that sounds awesome. What's our next step? What's our next play here?
All right, number 2, actually, so number 2 is be likable. Or you could say be more likable. And I put this in here because some studies show that actually being likable is more important than performance in getting pay raises. Now, that's the topic for a lot of debate. Personally, as a manager, I'd take someone who wasn't as likable but overperformed versus a buddy that didn't do this as much. But it's very important regardless. And the reason is because people like to promote and reward people that they like. It's just as simple as that. And this tip isn't, you don't have to be the life of the party, but what you need to do is be intentional about how you treat people, really. I mean, it really comes down to just be nice, be considerate, think about others before yourself. I mean, if you want to boil it down to the golden rule, treat others like you want to be treated or like they want to be treated. But you do that, it's going to make your life more enjoyable and people are going to naturally like you. And if it comes down to you and someone else, you're both overperformers, the boss is probably going to go with who he likes better, simply because if he's going to promote that person or give them a higher raise, he's going to work with them more, he's going to entrust more with them, and he wants to work with and trust somebody that he likes. It's just as simple as that.
High school is still following me around, but I hear you.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
No, but seriously, this, high school aside and all those horror shows, but this is really good information just for life in general. This transcends business, certainly. I mean, you see this in every aspect of your life. This is a life skill. It's just go out of your way to be a little more likable, right? That doesn't mean be fake or be that obvious networker or, the glad-handing person. Just go out of your way to be a little more likable. And you're going to be surprised at how beneficial it is for your life. So yeah, I really like this one.
Right. Well, I agree with you. The next tip is to network, so we'll see where we go from there.
He set you up for it.
Nice. You're welcome.
All right. Well, networking is important, and kind of you alluded to this. It has kind of gotten a bad rap because back in the day, companies and organizations would set up, quote, networking events, and you'd basically go to this party, and everybody's looking for what's in it for me. Basically, that was your objective. You go to the party, try to meet as many people, and find out how they can help you. So that's kind of why it's gotten a bad rap. But networking has really morphed over the past 15 or 20 years. So I would say that first of all, there's a lot of value in networking. It's an old rule of thumb that most new jobs are found through networking. And it's an old rule of thumb for a reason, is because it's true. But a network can also help you in a lot of other ways. I mean, you can develop a network that helps offer business advice to you. It can link you with experts, suppliers if you're in business. If you're looking for a good deal or you need somebody to do A, B, or C, you can network with people who've already use those services. These people in your network can serve as references when you look for a job. They don't have to give you the job, but they could just be references. They can even help you personally in your private life. I had a guy that I connected with from business that happened to run a soccer club on the side, and I got my son on a certain soccer team as a result of knowing him because I'd networked with him in business. So, it can have other benefits to you as well. It's not just business. You do want to have your network be, I would say, meaningful though. So you don't want to just connect with 1,000 people who you kind of know. You would much rather have 200 people that you know well that can help you and you can help them because you know each other. And I would say networking is a two-way street too, which is kind of back to your comment about it being kind of negative, is that you need to help others as much as you get help from them. And in fact, I would recommend that you kind of reach out first. I always try to help others as much as I possibly can to build up a ton of goodwill, because there's someday that I might need my network, and I want to be sure that I've invested a lot in them before I ask them to come back and invest in me.
I actually think this is really interesting. In the management sales world, I've always had trouble visualizing networking being useful. I don't know. That's my own limitations. In the construct of the business that Brad and I are creating, Choosify, I see it being incredibly valuable. And I've actually seen how it's benefited us dramatically as we try to, spread this message. So it's kind of I have always had trouble visualizing how you could do it in a way that's not spammy. And I'm particularly interested in seeing, I know that you're a fan of LinkedIn. I don't have a LinkedIn account. I've never seen any value in it. I'm kind of curious how you use that.
So I was just about to say that. I mean, LinkedIn has made networking a lot easier than it used to be 25 years ago, because it's real easy just to connect with people. So I use LinkedIn. I would check it every day. It would be one of the tabs that would come up on my browser when I open my browser. I would look for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, see what's going on with people, see if there's anybody I wanted to connect with. And when you have a career that's fairly long, you just forget about people, and you go, oh yeah, Sarah, she was awesome. I need to connect with her. We worked together 15 years ago. So you just connect with people, you read a few articles, and you then slowly build your network over time. Just do a little bit every day, and you can really get a pretty meaningful network. I have something around 1,700 connections right now on LinkedIn. I'm not even working. I'm retired, and I still check it every day. It's still one of the pages that opens automatically, and it takes me just 2 or 3 minutes a day. So it's really, really easy to use. But I would say that you don't want to do that. So you don't want to say, only that. You don't want to say, well, I did LinkedIn, so I've done my networking. There are other things you want to do to supplement that. And one of my favorites was lunch. So I'm going to eat lunch. You're going to eat lunch. Why don't we just eat lunch together? And we then talk about business. We talk about our families. We connect. This could be with people inside the company you work for. It could be outside. It could be personal connection. So once a week, I always had lunch with somebody. And you just connect and you keep your network healthy doing that. So you combine LinkedIn with some sort of personal connection, and that's really what you do that. You'll be pretty successful at networking.
So actionable tips again. This is, as you can tell, this is my thing. LinkedIn. I've never gotten it. I'm on LinkedIn. I have, a couple hundred connections or whatever it may be. I never use the thing. Talk me through how I would sit down, if I was looking for a job or I was looking to, further my network or keep in touch with people. Those 2 or 3 minutes, are you sending messages? If so, are you sending LinkedIn mails, or how does that actually work? And I'm sorry to get down to the nitty gritty, but I think this is important.
Sure. Let me start even from the beginning. So, how do you make the most of LinkedIn? And I did this probably 5 or 10 years ago, however old LinkedIn is at this point in time. There are certain things you need to do to have a great profile just to begin with. So you want to Google that, how to have a great LinkedIn profile. They probably have a guide for you, but I know a few of the basics. One is you want to have a professionally done picture, right? You don't have a picture of you and your dog unless you're a veterinarian, right? Then it would work in that case. But otherwise, if you're a CEO of a company, it's probably not going to work as much. So you want a professional picture that shows your face, that so people can recognize you. You want to have your history in there written. I would say you want to spend as much time on that as you would a resume, because that's what it is. It's a resume. It's a resume that you would send to a company. You want to make sure there's no typos. You want to make sure that the things that are highlighted on there are accomplishments, because those are things that you want to emphasize. I'm somebody that gets things done. I overperform, if you want to go back to that. So you want to establish your profile first in a way that really presents you as the person you want to be. So I'd say that's the step one. Now, step two, so when you go in on a daily basis, so I go in on a daily basis, it gives you notifications on your network. So for example, it'll say, Jim just got promoted today. Send him a congratulations note. So I usually do. I send him a message saying, hey, Jim, that's awesome. Hope the new job works out well. Hope you're doing well. Best wishes. And that's it. I mean, that's the extent of that, what that message might be. It also highlights events. People have birthdays even now if they put their birthdays on there. So there's opportunities for you to reach out to certain people. It also prompts you for, hey, you know this group of people. You probably know somebody on this list as well. So I look through that list and go, yeah, I didn't know that Sheila was even on LinkedIn, or I forgot that we worked together so many years ago. I'm going to send her an invitation to connect. So I do that. It's very simple and easy to use. And you do one of those a day, and you have 365 new connections in a year. So you don't have to build this network in the next 5 minutes or anything. You work at it a little bit. You make a little bit of progress every day. And by doing that over the course of time, you have a successful and large network.
One of the things that's funny about that is I think Brad, LinkedIn irritates him because it's actually what he does without a social frame. He does it all behind the scenes, like on his own. And LinkedIn, they just basically took what Brad does behind the scenes and just turn it into a software program.
They stole it from you.
I think that's what
Damn them.
But there is something really interesting here. So, I think ultimately the goal cannot be to have 800 contacts. There's no value in just having 800 contacts, when you're comparing yourself to Tom that only has 400. That's not the ultimate point. The point is, what do you then do, or what opportunities do those 800 contacts or 1,700 contacts? At some point, you have to say, all right, what is the value of that? And then what do you do with that, right?
Right. So let me give you some examples. So a great example was, when I was the president of the $100 million company, I was president for 2 years. We had our highest level of sales in 35 years, the full year that I was the president. And then they hired a new CEO who didn't want a president, and I was fired 3 months into the second year that I was there. So I think that can only happen when you're at the lower levels. It actually gets kind of more brutal the higher you get up in a company. But, I needed my network then. So at that point I had a choice to make. That was when I was, my late 40s or, 50 probably. So I was financially independent at that point in time. So I could have retired then if I wanted to. So we talked about that, and we decided, no, we're going to still work a little bit more. Plus, we lived in Oklahoma. So not to denigrate Oklahoma for any of your Oklahoma listeners, but it's not Colorado. I
wouldn't say it's a dead space out there, but we don't have quite as many. I think there's a little more geographical space in between our listeners in Oklahoma. Love you guys though. Thank you.
Yeah. So, we were like, no, we're going to let's move. We don't see ourselves retiring here. So we I reached out to my network. And what I did is, so it lists all the people you're connected with. So I literally went through that list and I picked people that I thought would help me and that could refer me to job openings that they had heard of. And out of those, I have 1,700 connections. So you're right. You don't have a personal relationship with 1,700 people. And there's a whole philosophy about, it's like a Facebook, right? Do you friend someone you kind of know, or do you only friend people that, are in your family? I mean, you can manage it however you want to. But of that 1,700, there's probably, 200 or 300 that I could really, really count on that I know really well. But that's still a pretty big number. So I went through those people. I made a list, and then I reached out to them. I emailed them and said, hey, FYI, I'm looking for an opportunity. If you know of anything, I'd appreciate you passing it my way. And one of those contacts sent me the job that I ultimately ended up taking and moving to Colorado for. So that's a clear example of how I needed my network at that point in time, and it delivered.
That's solid. That's a great example. I'm glad that everything that we talked about over the last 5 minutes led us to that conclusion, because now I see the value. And yeah, absolutely. And you're just doing a few little things each day, but it gives you this foundational structure that you can lean on when you need it. That wouldn't have been there for you if you hadn't put the time in a little bit at a time over the last several years.
Right. Exactly.
All right, man. What comes next?
Okay, number 4 is a little controversial. It's called Be Attractive. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Studies will show that people who are more attractive get paid more. It just gets down to that. I'm not going to say it's right.
I've always known it, but I'm son of a gun. Son of a gun. I knew there was scientific studies that were showing why I wasn't getting it.
So let me just give this one quick tip, is that think back to if you're married now or if you're dating now, think about how you acted when you were dating. You dressed a little bit nicer. You paid a little bit more attention to your appearance. You acted a little nicer. If you just do that, that's all. You don't have to be Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie in this tip. You just need to be as good as you can be. You need to be better probably than what you are now. Just date your career. So look at your career as, hey, I'm going to go meet this person today and I want to present myself in the best light possible. And if you do that, you've got this tip down.
Cool. No, that's great.
Yeah, date your career is another tweetable
That's
quote there.
right.
I like that. So yeah, I mean, this is similar to number 2, be likable, right? It's just
It actually,
a little extra effort.
Yeah, and it totally relates because people tend to like attractive people. It just works that way. So they kind of work hand in hand.
All right. What's our next step?
Okay, so the number 5 is continue learning and developing your skills. In today's environment, no matter what field you're in, if you're not learning and growing, you're falling behind because everything's advancing. I mean, it continues to advance and there's new learnings. The level at which we're learning now is just growing exponentially. So you need to take the bull by the horns and you need to keep learning. And this can range all the way from, something serious, like I'm going to go back and get a degree, to something that's not as serious. It's just in your regular time. It's listening to podcasts on your drive into work or when you're mowing the lawn or when you're working out, something you're doing already, you can be learning at the same time. Yeah, or you can do it with an audio book if you prefer. You can read. You just need to continue to learn and grow. And in particular, you need to develop skills that have a lot of financial payoff. So you guys are going to love this because you guys love Warren Buffett, right?
Love him.
Okay. So I found this from a talk that he gave at Columbia University in 2009. He talked to a group of college students who were graduating, and he said that he would offer them $100,000 for 10% of their future earnings for any of them. Now, we've already established that that's kind of a sucker's bet because if they're going to earn $35,000 a year, get 3% raises, they're going to earn $3.2 million. So Warren's willing to give them $100,000 in order to get $320,000 back. That sounds like the type of deal Warren Buffett would like, right?
Yeah.
And it's even worse because he's talking to Columbia students. Their average starting salary at college is almost $60,000. So he's trying to get a really good deal. But he went on then and said, so his second quote was, now you can improve your value by 50% just by learning communication skills, and in particular, public speaking. So if that's the case, see me after class and I'll pay you $150,000. So he was basically saying that you can increase you're worth 50% more if you know how to speak in public. So there are communication skills that he's attributing a pretty high value to. And there's a lot of those sort of skills. There's skills like selling skills, being able to negotiate, being able to communicate through writing. There are a ton of skills. I'm actually working on a post on this now that if you have these skills, you are going to make X percent more than someone who doesn't have those. And those are the sort of things you need to learn. You need to learn them through either some sort of formal education on your own or through work experience. But those are the ones that will really pay off for you over your career.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I don't know if you've ever read Scott Adams by chance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And, he's brilliant. And if you've ever read about his concept of the talent stack, it sounds almost exactly what you're talking about there. And you should definitely reference it for that article.
Okay.
He's basically talking about putting together, and actually public speaking is one of his top handful of talents. So that ties with Mr. Buffett there perfectly. It's taking these wildly ranging talents and putting them together into this talent stack where you don't need to be the best in the world at anything. You just need to be, let's say, the top 10 or 20%. And when you're the top 10 or 20% at 10, 20, 50 different random things, you are an extraordinarily valuable person and employee. So yeah, that really ties together almost exactly with what you're saying.
And I liked what you said about, it's in particular, podcast. And I think Brad and I wanted to focus on this even more in a future episode, but the versatility of audio learning, taking the free time that you have. There's very few things in this world that you can do while you are actually doing something else. If you're watching TV, you're just watching TV. If you're reading a book, you're just reading a book. But the podcasts and audiobooks, that gives you this ability to almost hijack your time and get a 2-for-1 special. Go run around the neighborhood with your audiobook. Go mow your lawn with your audiobook. Go work out with your audiobook. Go drive, and recapture that time that might be getting lost to the void. And that's a hack right there that I don't think people talk about enough.
No, it's and I've done that for years and years. You mow the lawn, you take a walk around the neighborhood, you work out, you drive. A lot of us have time in the car. I've listened to it on airplanes if you're traveling. There's all this downtime that you have that you can really redeem, or not even downtime. It's really you're doing something else. Let's do two things at the same time. And it's really powerful. And over time, it adds adds up over weeks, months, and years.
Yeah, and that ties into an article that you wrote that we'd love to talk about. Hopefully we'll get you back on the podcast. Maybe we can chat about it then. But it's make small progress every day. This is such a powerful concept, and I've spoken about this a number of times. But it's interesting to talk about podcasts, which is I credit basically all the process improvements that I've put into place in my life over the last couple of years with podcasts generally, and probably the Tim Ferriss podcast specifically with all of his various guests. And this is how I live my life now, which is make small progress every day. It's amazing how much you can do in a year or 5 years. But man, if you try to do everything in a day or a week, you're going to be pretty disappointed. But it's such a cool mental approach to life to say, all right, I just want to get a little bit better every single day at these couple things, or even just this one thing. And you wake up 10 years from now and you're an expert, or you're just dramatically better in life. So yeah, that really resonated with me.
Right.
Number 5, continue learning and developing skills. And so I think there were some really cool thoughts in there. ESI, what's number 6? Walk us through it.
Okay, number 6 is manage yourself. So there are a whole lot of, I'll call these soft skills that you need to have in order to move your career forward. So you're probably familiar with the book Emotional Intelligence, or you've heard that phrase, that these skills would fall under that heading. So skills like you need to develop empathy, social skills, personal motivation, drive, self-confidence. I mean, it's all kind of like the touchy-feely stuff that you need to navigate through any sort of organization, and in particular, like company politics and things of that nature, because every company, every organization has some sort of politics. They exist everywhere, and you need to learn how to have kind of this extra sense for how do I deal with this? How do I get things done? How do I make things happen? So I would say 2 things here. One is under this is one, you need a system for how you get things done. So we talked about overperforming. How are you going to do that? So there are a gazillion different, there's 7 habits for highly effective people. There's day planners, there's getting things done. There's tons of systems. You can develop your own system, but you need to have some sort of system for your personal motivation and drive for how you get things done. And then second, for kind of these softer things and the political implications of various situations you might find yourself in, you need to find yourself a mentor. You need to find someone who is 10 or 20 years kind of down the road from where you are that will take you under his or her wing and will kind of guide you, because otherwise the only other way to learn these things in a lot of cases is either you have them innately, which most people don't, or you have to learn them by trial and error. And if you have a bad enough error, it could be kind of it could be a job-ending error if you step on the wrong landmine. So I would find a mentor to guide me through this process of how you manage just your day-to-day activity of working.
I'm actually very interested in that. What, practically speaking for you over the course of your career, what did finding a mentor actually look like?
So for me, it happened pretty naturally. There's just some people you click with, and some people, that's a little bit harder. So your boss is inherently a mentor just because the fact of he or she's above you, they've been around longer, you're going to be interacting with them the most. So you have kind of a default mentor there. But generally, that's not the best person to do the sort of thing I'm talking about. It's usually someone you want to find that is, it could be just even a little bit older, right? The definition of an expert is someone who knows a little bit more than you do, right? So it could be someone that's just been there in the company for a year or 2 even, and that's going to help you make some progress. Or it could be someone that's like at your boss's level, but maybe in a different part of the company who you have a connection with because you play softball together, or you go to church together, or your kids do this or that together, and kind of a natural relationship develops. And then you can just say to them, hey, I really appreciate your insights on topic A, B, or C. Would you mind if we just went to lunch or something, and I could pick your brain for how best I can handle the situation I'm dealing with? Almost everybody is going to say yes to that sort of invitation.
The word mentor never comes up. It's just pick your brain as code for mentor.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Very cool.
So yeah, you talked about a bunch of the different systems that are available for people to, I guess, manage themselves. But can you just talk us through, surprise, surprise, I want to, get some actionable tips. What did you use? And is there something that you can point people to out in the audience to research this?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that you call it luck, you call it fortune, you call it whatever, but one of the things that happened by coincidence even early in my career that probably made one of the biggest differences in my life, not just my jobs, but in my personal life. So when I took my first job out of graduate school, the company that I worked for then sent me to a class. And at that time, it was the day planner class. And they taught you a system for how to set priorities, how to mark them, how to kind of break them down into actionable tasks, and then how to have to-do lists to make sure that you achieve them within the time frame that you had. It was a whole system. So I use that not only, and they were teaching it from a business standpoint, but I'm like, this is a great life thing. Like I got a lot of stuff I want to do outside of work that I could apply these same principles to. So I, for years, carried around a day planner with me, and I used their system for getting things done. And that morphed over the years from that, where it was a analog journal, to I had a Palm Pilot. You guys probably are so young you don't remember Palm Pilots, but that was kind of like the first version of like a to-do list and like a couple other things, Notepad and that sort of thing. It morphed from that to a BlackBerry, and it morphed from a BlackBerry now to a smartphone. And I use a service called Todoist right now, which is basically kind of a list management system. You can set goals. You can have a list that goes along with those. And I use them for everything from blogging to, the college application process that I'm working on with my daughter, to home maintenance, to exercise, and, the goals I have for that. So like I said, it doesn't really matter what system. Getting things done is a popular one these days. It doesn't matter what system you have other than it works for you and you apply it. And if you do that, you'll be much more effective at managing yourself, and you'll then be able to overperform because you'll have a systematic way for being sure that you overperform.
Yeah, Todoist, that's funny that you mentioned. Todoist has changed my entire life. It is the best thing that's happened to me productivity-wise ever in my entire life. It's ridiculous. I use it. I basically outsourced my entire brain to Todoist at this point.
Right. That's one of the things they talked about in the class that I had is that a short pencil is better than a long memory.
Yeah.
Write everything down, and then you don't have to remember it. You don't have the clutter in your mind of like, okay, what I got to remember to do this stuff. It's down there. So you can write it down, you can schedule it, and then you can forget it.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's been life-changing for exactly that reason. It's, once it's out of your brain, you just feel so much more mentally free. It's remarkable.
That is crazy. Brad is the only other person I know that raves about Todoist. And just because he raved about it so much a few weeks ago, I actually went ahead and downloaded it. Now, I haven't done anything with it yet, and I need to go listen to the podcast that inspired him to try this, because I feel like there's something I'm missing out on. And I have downloaded 6 or 7 of these things. I never end up using them for more than a month, but I feel like there's something that I'm missing. So you've convinced me, Brad has convinced me. I am going to start building my entire life around this product.
Yes, it's I've used it in various forms. This one's awesome because it's online, it's on my phone, it's easy to manage. Once you put something down there, so one of the biggest values to this is once you put something down, it frees your mind. You're done with it. You don't have to remember it. A lot of people I run into are like, yeah, I got to do 3 things a day and I can't remember 2 of them. I don't have that problem. I don't even have to. In fact, my wife will say well, what are you doing today? And I'm like, I don't know. I got to check my phone because that's my brain, right? It has my list of stuff on it, and it frees you up, and it also helps you develop a systematic way for accomplishing things.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what Brad said.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear that. It's almost verbatim what I described. And yeah, it's basically your outsourced brain is how I describe it to people.
Right.
It's funny to hear you use almost those exact words. And
right.
What I would say to everyone out there is give it a try, but don't do it just halfway, because you need to really rely on this thing. That's where the value comes, when you're certain you're not forgetting anything. So anytime there's any kind of recurring task in my entire life, it immediately goes into Todoist. So aside from the normal day-to-day, I have to go pick up X, Y, and Z, or do such and such, write an article for Choosify, or, those go into Todoist. But the more important items are the recurring tasks that happen once a month or even once a year. Once they're out, of your brain and into Todoist, it's freeing, as you described. So yeah, this is a real game changer.
Yeah, and to do this, so to have this system, I mean, back in the day, like I said, it was an analog thing. I used to joke to people that, I would run, because it was a book. I had my whole life in a book. That was my brain. I would run into a burning building to get that book if it was in there and, to save it, because it's that important. And now that has just morphed from that to, it's all electronic nowadays, but it can make a huge impact, not only in your career, but your personal life. I rubber stamp everything you said 100%.
Very cool.
All right. So we're up to number 7 on your list, the final item.
Okay. So the last one is to market yourself. And this comes, let me just say, sometimes you do all these things, you overperform, you're likable, you manage yourself, you educate yourself, and you still don't get rewarded for it. That your boss says, well, the company's not doing well, or I only had so much raises and I had to divvy them out, so I just gave them out equally, or whatever the reason. So you don't get rewarded. So in those times, you have a decision to make. Do I gut it out and just kind of take it for the chance to have future rewards here, or do I decide I want to change jobs? And do I want to, go somewhere else? And those are the times where you can really get huge pay bumps. I mean, 15, 20, 25% jumps because you're going to take your talents somewhere else. But to do that, you need to know how to market yourself. It is a marketing activity to find a new job, to find the opportunities. And you get those through networking in a lot of cases. So it goes back to networking, how to contact potential employers, how you contact them, you need communication skills. And then to get into the real marketing, you need to know how to write a resume, how to interview, how to negotiate from there. And if you know how to do all those things, your pay is going to be higher than someone else who would also get the job, let's say, but not have those skills, simply because you know how to market yourself and they don't.
This is so cool. You got to think to yourself, the person that's just passing through life, which is what we just call, average Joe, as opposed to the person that is intentional about every aspect of their life. And this is certainly a major component of that. They are just teeing themselves up for success. And we talked about the value of getting that initial bump right out the gate. We talked about the value of getting over the average pay raise increases over time. And, we're only going to be in these working careers in a perfect world. And I realize some of us have 25, 30-year careers, and that's a shortened career. But, a lot of you are thinking, how can I do this in 10 to 15 years? This is the key to that. This is what that looks like. We have talked about the financial component of that over and ad nauseum. We're trying to give you all those tools, but this is going to supercharge that path if you can take these and flesh these out by spending time on ESI Money's site. If you flesh these out and figure out what that looks like and apply that to the career component of that, which is the primary earning vehicle that you have, you're just going to crush this thing. So that just really great ideas that you brought to the table, ESI.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, ESI. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to really go through that content with us. I think there's such value there, and I can't wait to really get to dig into it even further with you and go through these line items one at a time, really go through the actionable steps that we can all implement. But now we're going to go ahead and hop into our hot seat. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
All right, man, we're back. Now, don't let these
Love
don't let the hot seat scare you. These questions are going to be relatively tame. All right, Brad, you want to go ahead and get this thing rolling with question number 1?
Yeah. Question number 1, your favorite blog that is not your own.
So I have 2. I can't answer probably any of these questions with just one. So I have one that I've read for years. I love Financial Samurai because he and I we're similar in net worth and kind of our life situation. And, Sam always picks some sort of very interesting spin on any topic. So I've loved that one for years. And the one I'm really liking now in the FI community is Our Next Life. She's really a good writer, and she comes across well. She picks great topic, and I think that blog is going to be huge. They're in the process of retiring now, but once they do retire and have full time to do it, I think they're going to be gigantic.
I've actually had Financial Samurai's been on my radar for a while, and I do love his stuff. I actually have not looked at Our Next Life yet, but someone else that we talked to recently just mentioned them as well. So I'll definitely check them out.
Yeah, they're good.
All right. Question number 2, your favorite article of all time. Now, this can go either way. You're more than welcome to use one of your own, or if there's another article on the internet sphere that you want to use, that would be fine as well.
Yeah. So, there's probably one article is not going to make a whole lot of change for me. So the one article that I have that I like the best is my article. It's simply called I Retired. And I like it for sentimental reasons. And I look at it maybe once, every other week or so, because I just remember how happy I was when I was writing the article that, okay, I finally did it. I'm done. I'm moving on and I'm retired. So that's the one I always refer back to.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I would imagine there would be a huge emotional attachment to that article as well, because that is a game changer.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, your favorite life hack.
So we already talked about to-do lists and a system for getting things done. So we'll leave that off the side. On a financial standpoint, I think my favorite one and a key part in helping me achieve financial independence was we lived in low-cost cities through my entire career. And I know you guys have talked about this before too. You've talked about the cost of New York City versus the cost of Richmond, and there's a huge difference there. If you have to pay 20, 30, 40, 50% more for just stuff that you get, for half price somewhere else, that's an anchor that you're having to drag around as you're trying to get to financial independence. I mean, there's everything. It's housing, it's the associated costs with housing, it's taxes, it's food, it's transportation, it's everything. And we lived in great cities that we loved. They weren't the metropolitan cities and that a lot of people talk about, but they had everything we needed. They were great for raising families and they were low cost, and we saved a bundle. And I would suggest to people out there thinking about, especially wanting to reach financial independence quickly, is considering, moving to a low cost of living city because it can save you a ton of money.
And would you qualify Colorado as one of those?
So I live in Colorado Springs, so it's not as expensive as Denver. So that's the other thing, is that there are states that are more expensive, but then there are cities within the states that are less expensive. So I think Colorado Springs, where I live, is roughly about average.
Okay.
And we're at the point now that it doesn't really matter.
Right.
When we were when we spent most of our time, we've lived in cities like Nashville. Nashville's probably might be more expensive now, but back when we lived there, it wasn't. We lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was an awesome community. It's where our rental properties still are when we're in Colorado, and our rental properties are in Michigan. And we lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I mean, all those, are low cost of living cities compared to a lot of others, and they still have tons of things to do.
I thought what you said was very astute. Taxes and cost of living can just be an anchor that you're dragging behind you. That painted a really cool picture.
All right. Number 4, your biggest financial mistake that you've ever made.
Okay. Well, I love this question because a lot of times people assume that those have reached financial independence, they did it because they did everything right, and I can't do it because I haven't done everything right. And that is definitely not the case. Everybody that's reached FI has done something or some things, probably a lot of things, incorrect. So I had a lot to choose from, unfortunately, on this one. One fun one, this was when I was in college. I worked all the way through high school at a grocery store, earning $3.35 an hour. So just put that, away for how awesome that job was. And I saved about $3,000. I had it in the bank. And the bank was not insured, and the bank went bankrupt. So I remember getting the call in college from my mom going, "Hey, they just closed the bank." And I was like, "What? How does that happen?"
What?
Wow.
So it turned out okay. It took 2 years or so, but we got 90% of our money back. But it was just like, that could have been, $3,000 to me back then was a lot of money.
It's a lot of money to me now.
Yeah. So that was back then. Really the worst mistake I've ever made, excuse me, was I waited to start investing until really I was married, right? It took me a few years to grow up after I got out of grad school. I got married, and that's when I started investing. And even then, I put part of my money in index funds, and I put the other part of my money, I bought individual stocks, which is, just a loser's game. So I probably lost 5 to 7 years of compounded returns, which, the amount that I have now, if I had an extra 5 or 7 years on top of that, that would be a huge amount of money. So that was by far the biggest mistake that I made, was waiting to save and invest.
Yeah, 5 to 7 years could theoretically have doubled it almost, right? Depending on the return.
Right.
That's incredible.
All right, question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
So that goes along with my biggest mistake. It would be to save and invest as much as you can, as early as you can. And I have a 2-part post series on my site where I went back and said, okay, let's go back to the beginning of high school, because I would consider your freshman year in high school kind of where you start your career. Let's go back then, and let's say I'm back there at 14 years old and I know what I know now. What would I do differently, and how would that affect my net worth? And I gotta go through the process of I'd make this different, that different. But one of the biggest changes I would make would be to save and invest earlier and for a longer period of time as a result.
I think there's real value in fleshing that picture out. I love that you're starting the story at 14. This idea that I have with second generation fire and taking all the ideas that I learned from these different people and just figuring out how can I give my son one choice, one choice, and he's going to get to benefit from all these different things that we've learned from other people. And I love the idea that, it doesn't start when you're 30, right? Whereas most of first generation fire, that's where we say we kind of started. And occasionally we did something right a few years sooner. And then the people that got the head start maybe did it in their early 20s. How cool is it that it starts at 14 or it starts at 10 or
right.
whatever. And this is what I would do differently starting from and now we have this, this right now I would say it's probably close to somewhere between 15 to 20,000 people that are listening to this show, and they're thinking about this for their kids. And they actually have now real applicable information they can give to their kids and help mentor them through that period in their life. Second generation fire is teed up for greatness.
Right. Yes. And for me, I put it at 14 because there are things that you can do in high school that will get you into a better college, will allow you to pay less for college, and will set you up for your career, which we've spent time talking about. If you start working on that intentionally at 14, you are just going to blow it out of the water by the time you're 25.
So I think that's the story. Now, we did have a bonus question that we wanted to throw out at you. What was the favorite purchase that you made on Amazon last year?
Yeah, this was a hard one because I buy a lot of stuff from Amazon. So I got a wide range for you of choices, so you can pick which you might like. Now that I'm retired, I have more time, so I play more video games. So I just finished Horizon Zero Dawn. So if anybody's a video gamer out there, loved that video game. It's new, and I'd love those sort of things. I got that from Amazon. I also got some airtight storage containers that have worked really well for me for coffee. So, you want to keep your coffee, you want to keep air out of your coffee when you store it. So I got these ones called EVAC, E-V-A-K. They're glass and they're airtight. It's not like a Tupperware thing where you pop it. It's where you actually push down on it and it takes all the air out. So you eliminate the air that's getting to your beans before you actually need to grind them. And I've got 3 of those in various sizes right now.
Now, I'm passionate about coffee, but aren't beans sensitive to light?
Yeah, so that's the one thing. So I keep them in a cupboard until I grind them. So I wish it was kind of it is clear, so it's clear glass. I wish it was it was like a darker glass, because that's the one thing that I'm missing.
Well, maybe we should work together to build a product and sell it as a project down the road, and we can do that instead.
Yeah,
we'll get it sent out to Alibaba and then get it sent out.
That's right.
All right, cool. Well, I think this will be a lot of fun, ESI. I think maybe if you wanted to come back in a few months or so, maybe we should talk about fleshing it out for that 14-year-old, that parent that's wanting to mentor their child through those critical decisions early on. Talk that through, and then just go kind of step by step what that might actually look like. And I know you have kids. I'm sure those are conversations that you're having with your kids. And I'm sure there's many parents out there that would love to know how they should be mentoring their child to really set them up for success down the road.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Well, you've got the open invitation. I know we have a lot of people that maybe they were somewhat familiar with your material, but they're going to want to connect with you. They're going to want to find out about the work they're doing. And also, I think they're probably going to be very interested. I know you have an ebook that you created on your site. I'm sure they're going to want to check that out as well. How can they connect to your community?
Yeah, well, thank you. The best way is to visit me at ESI Money, and ESI stands for Earn, Save, and Invest. So earnsaveandinvestmoney.com. On Twitter at ESI Money Blog, and on Facebook at ESI Money Blog as well.
Well, again, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been great.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. as I said at the beginning, this was a conversation that as soon as I talked to ESI for the first time about doing this, I knew we needed to have. Nobody's talking about it. In the FI community, we tend to overlook or downplay the value of your current income. It's just inevitable. We're running to the future. We're running to our passions. And a lot of times in the process, the value of your career gets marginalized. But it is the number one earning vehicle that you have. It is the train that's going to push this thing toward its natural conclusion. And the reason that FI is a function of the math is because you have an income, and you have an income because of your job. And so I think ESI is the guy to coach us through this and give us the behind the scenes look at the small things that you can do that add up over time as you supercharge your path to FI. And the fire is spreading, my friends. So we'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.